the front line, where we empower survivors' voices and challenge the status quo. I am your host, Kelly Humphreys, survivor, advocate, author, speaker, researcher, ambassador, and a seasoned former first responder. Supported by the team at Media 8, Off the Cuff with Kel is about growth and healing, leadership through trauma, awareness and understanding. We bring you compelling stories of courage, transformation and expert insights, along with candid discussions on the challenges victims and survivors face. Off the Cuff with Kel celebrates our shared humanity, blending deep vulnerability with humour. Each episode is crafted with love, honesty and the emotions that bind us, whether it's laughter or tears, promoting resilience and hope. Please note, some of the discussions we have can be hard to hear and include sexual abuse themes, online exploitation, domestic and family violence and trauma. So, listener discretion is advised. Please join us as we change the world one story at a time, embracing courage through vulnerability. All right. Good evening and hello and welcome to Off the Cuff with Kel, episode number 31. I have been waiting for this moment, Mr. Steve Ball, to have you back in action and hanging out with me, because it wasn't so long ago we were here with the amazing Grace Tame, yourself, Campbell, my amazing boss, and you shining in all your glory. So welcome back.
It's the hair.
Well, I was going to say something, but then I didn't
honestly,
want to get in trouble.
It's okay. I've got teenagers, so I get called much worse.
Yeah, you're very resilient. I already know this. I already know this from our conversations, and you're like a brother from another mother. I swear to God. Like, I just love chatting with you because you're one of the most like humble, strong, resilient men that I know. And it's hard to be a survivor and stand up in this space, but you seem to do it so beautifully. And I'm just so proud to know you and to have you here and just being able to share your story. So if I forget to say it later, I'm saying it now. Thank you for being here. So appreciate it.
No, that's all good. It's absolutely my pleasure. I think when I think it was our one of our first conversations, I said to you that for me, telling my story is making sure little Steve gets his story told, right? Like, where I didn't have a voice, I'm giving myself a voice, and for every other little person out there, I'm giving them their voice. And as a guy, it's hard. Like it's extra hard, and that was part of my own, I suppose, healing journey in this has been just going, you know what, I'm not going to be ashamed of the path that I've walked, because it's brought me to where I am and taking me to where I'm going to be.
Yeah, so it's such an epic journey. And so if you didn't get to listen to our previous episode, and I'm so sorry, I don't know the bloody number, but Steve is an amazing lived experience expert, and his experience involves online abuse as well as CSA. So he's got an amazing experiential hat, and he works with Bravehearts as well. So he works in the National Redress Scheme, and Bravehearts is obviously one of Australia's leading child protection organisation in Australia. He's a Waka Waka man from Cherbourg, so he's got a First Nations lens, which he's able to share from, and I think that's so powerful. Like, it gives me kind of goosebumps, because some of the conversations we've had, especially from that perspective, and I'm so keen to prick your brain about and get you to share from, because I think it's so valuable. And the man who's lost, I think, what is it, like 127?
Yeah, it's about 120 kilos a lot.
Like, holy shit,
dude. Yeah, about that.
That's me in a bit.
It's nuts.
Actually, I totally gave myself away.
Yeah, that's right.
All part of the journey, my friend.
I look at some of my old photos, and like, while I identify, I see that was me. I don't see it as me, right? Like, because back then, and we'll talk more about it later. Like I was burnt out. I was I just gone through a marriage split, breakup, and I'd stopped taking care of myself for quite a long time. And I was 230-ish kilos, and just I'd all but given up, and I found something that created that showed me that I still had a spark there. And initially it was everything, all of it was for me, for my kids, because I grew up for my whole life without having a good father, and my teenage years I didn't have any father person that was there. Then I ended up finding father that modeled the way I am as a dad and the way I am as a man, and a husband. I promised my kids that you're going to have me. You're going to have me for a long time, whether you like it or not. So for me, that was.
Yeah, tell us how it started. Can you take us back a little bit to growing up and what that was like for you, and give us a bit of context around sort of how your journey started and got you to here, to where you're at now.
Yeah. So my early years, I don't. I've shared this with a few people. I don't have a lot of memories before I turned 10, and the ones that I have, there's only one good one. I grew up in a really, really violent household. My biological father was AJ, and
Army.
So his army, and so he had that really strict militant, heavy mindset, and I was a little bit different as a kid. I was the kid who'd walk around singing and dance. That's just what I do, which is funny. You look at this fella, but I
just had this picture of Happy the gnome, like the garden gnome, because he's the big beard.
Pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
That's pretty much, honestly. And just as long as he's got a microphone and he's out doing some show tunes, or pretty much anything from classical to musicals to metal, there's everything in between. But so I grew up, and I was this kid, and my biological father was extremely violent. I got thrown down a set of stairs when I was 3 years old, and which broke my back in three places.
Wow.
And then, after my parents eventually split up after some pretty horrible physical stuff, the sexual abuse started happening when I was. When my brother, sister, and I would go into his care, and eventually, when he moved to a different area, it started happening with not just him but some of his friends, and
Right.
part of that, them taking photos and videos and stuff that I had heard along the grapevine had been put online. And so for me growing up, it was as a little kid, I'm the eldest. So for me, no matter what happened when we were in Lance's care, if I knew he was drunk or something was going to throw myself under the bus, I wouldn't rather or my sister cop anything. It just, I would purposely muck up. I'd keep doing things so that I'd be the target. And I think that's just naturally what you do. Whether you're the eldest or you're the one who's being targeted, it becomes that thing of going, you know what, if I can stop it from happening to someone else, then it's just me. I'll hold that, and I'll shoulder that, and that's basically what happened. And then we stopped seeing him when I was about 10. And I shut down. It was after that I shut down. Before that, I was still this happy-go-lucky kid, and I kind of pushed through things. And it was finally, it was like this final thing of like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't have to deal with this.
I do. Yeah, I really understand that. I do. Yeah, sorry. For anyone listening, we're just having a bit of a lag on our mic. Just be open about that. So it's a bit disjointed, and we apologize for that.
Yeah, and so for me, it then became the thing of like, my behavior went right off the rails. Like I started smoking weed. I started, I was drinking pretty much every day. I was smoking weed multiple, I was high and drunk more than I was ever sober as a teenager. I had such a disjointed idea of intimacy and sex, that for me it was just it meant nothing at all. And I ended up getting quite involved in the church, which was like this weird sort of space, right? Like, because I was this kid who was so broken, had this real messed up idea of who we are and how we're meant to be, and I had this inner drive in me to be able to go, I need to find approval in something. Something somewhere has to see me as good. And that's where I got involved in the church. But the thing that I got out of my whole experience in the church is, one, I can talk, but two, got in particular who took me in as like a father type figure, and he's still one of my closest friends in the world. We've both got very different sort of belief systems now, and that's fine. But it was from that I saw that not all men were what I had experienced. And I learned some different, and he saw me going right off the rails, and just was basically, he was there for my mum, and me, really. Like, he was that person who I knew I could trust him. It was him and my best friend. That was it. I didn't trust anyone else. That was it. And when I turned 17, I decided I was going to go tell the police. I just decided, I just decided, fuck this. This guy needs to pay. Someone needs to hear me. Someone needs to believe me. I walked into the local police station, and they knew me because, like, I'd been taken home by the cops. I couldn't tell you how many times. So honestly, I was a broken kid, and hurt people, right?
That's what I say too, Steve. I do. I get it.
Walked, and I went in there thinking, I'd finally be able to get this just right. And I've learned now that we don't have a justice system; we have a legal system. We need a for me. Yes. But back then, 17-year-old kid, I picked myself up and I walked in there, and I stood there to the person at the front counter, and I said, I need to talk to somebody about me being abused. They got the police officer, one of the police officers that was there. They took me around the back, and I knew the back of that station quite well. And we sat back there, and I poured it all out. And he basically goes to me, Steve, you're just being a belligerent young man who is just angry, and you're trying to get revenge on this, on your biological father, because he's not in your life. And I basically, told him to go fuck himself, picked myself up, walked out, and decided, fuck this, I'll never tell my story again.
Yeah, I'm hearing you on that. I do get a lot of people that come forward that have very similar experiences when they feel like they haven't been believed. But can I just take you back in your story? Like, I really want to touch on the part that you shared before about taking the blame, like becoming the target. And I got goosebumps because I know myself, and for so many survivors, and this is why I want to talk about this and just kind of nut this out a little bit with you, because I just know that it's so many stories, so many of our fellow survivors who've experienced abuse have struggled with this part of and I guess I talk about this with my mum in the second podcast I ever did. We had this conversation that I thought, like, by letting myself, so we're not letting anybody do, we don't and cannot give consent. I have to make that really clear.
That's right.
Because I think we forget, and not, I mean, it's hard until you actually internalize it. I don't know about you, but it's taken me, even now, sometimes I doubt my own belief system. And that shame, like, kind of picks its head up thinking, well, I let this happen because I thought I was doing something good to protect other people in my life. And so I kind of want to come back to that, if you don't mind, and just kind of, I'd love your perspective a bit more on, especially coming from, a male perspective, even like, community for you, growing up would have looked maybe a little bit different. And so I'd like to kind of talk about that a little bit, if you feel you can, pull that apart a bit with me,
Well, 100%. So for me, it was the shame, so it was this thing of going, I need to protect my brother and sister, and I couldn't tell anyone because the shame of what was going on, and of what people would think. And then there was this thing of like, if I told people, then my brother and sister wouldn't get to see their dad, and like all these things that, like, this kid, like, I don't know, I think I would have been 7 the first time that I had that thought of like, no, I can't tell anyone, because otherwise my brother and sister won't be able to see their dad, and he's not hurting them, comparatively. And it was this thing of like, well, when my mum and him broke up, I had that, that toxic BS that families do sometimes, where they go, "Oh, you're the man of the family now." Like, fuck off, idiot. But I
love your honesty, Steve.
that just perpetuated that thought process in me of like, oh, well, I have to protect them. It's my job. I need to do this. And it made that even stronger, that, well, I have to be a big man now. I need to be big and strong, and I can take this. That's fine. And as a teenager and then as an adult, it became this thing of like, those same thoughts of like, oh, well, no, I let that happen. Well, no, I didn't. I threw myself under the bus for what was the right thing, for me, for I suppose the lesser evil. And I understand now, and like you said, it's still that inner thought, right? That inner fight of like, that you can't consent, you just can't. And the power imbalance there was ridiculous, and it became a thing of, I knew that at a certain time of night, a certain thing would happen, and I knew the process, right? And it became that thing of just going, it's okay. I know what's about to happen. I'm not going to remember most of it, there, it was that thing of like, well, I'm the man. I need to be that person, and it's just not.
Yeah. I feel like there must be a part in there about kind of like the safety part, I think that's really important to talk to as well, because so many of us, well, it's I hate talking about it because there's still this tiny little shred of me that just goes, oh fuck, like, and it's that, like, that letting, you didn't let anything happen, but things happen because it's that people pleaser within us, right? It's the people pleaser in us, or they're called maladaptive learning behaviors, which is doing the thing to stay safe. And I think, I mean, it's the same thing for girls and guys who are struggling with this, or, you know, however you identify. If you're a child in this situation and you think that you're letting something happen to keep you, but it's to keep you safe. It's not that you're letting yourself do that, or you're choosing to do that out of your own free will. And I think that's something that I think is important to delineate, because I think we just hold on to that belief that we did the wrong thing and that we chose to do that, and we were somehow complicit in this, and we're not. We're groomed into it, and we're made to do this because that's the nature of abuse. And I'd love you to talk to that, even men, to maybe somehow find forgiveness for themselves in making those choices for safety.
And I think the thing is, you're groomed into a sense of normalcy, right? Like, and it's that thought of, like, well, no, I know this is what's going to happen, and I'm doing the right thing. And then, you know, later on when things finish, or, you know, however, like for me anyway, it was like I suddenly had those thoughts of, like, you know, oh well, I let that happen. And, you know, but it's that real struggle, because, like you said, it's that maladaptive sort of thing that goes on in the brain, right? Like when we think about the reptilian brain, where we talk about that, the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, and you go through all sort of stages of that, and then you don't actually really understand how that's affected you and where that sits until you're starting to process this later. And, you know, when we look at the statistics, right, people, for the most part, people aren't disclosing for many years later. You know, I think the last statistics I saw, it was like 28 years for most.
I think it's 27, but yeah. A long time.
And so for me, when I look at, like, the work that I do now, one of the things that I say to every single person that I've supported since I've been at Bravehearts, which is 8 years now, but every single person that I have supported, the first thing I say to them is that I want you to know that I believe you. That's it. There's no questions. You can tell me something that to someone else might sound like the wildest story in the world, but I can guarantee you that I believe you and that I'm here for you. And I want you to know that everything you tell me, I'm holding it deep and close to my heart, so that you know that little you is finally being heard, that little you is actually being believed, that you right now who's hurting can have it, you know, in community, it's man to man, men's business, women's business. And I say to the men there, you know, man to man, I want you to know that I believe you, and I want you to know that this is your safe space, you know. And for different people, sometimes the place where we're sitting might not be the safe space. Some people, it's, you know, we'll walk and talk down the beach, which is good for me because it helps me pay attention more. But it's about creating. For me, I have to. I'll burn in like 30 seconds. This, you know, I'm a leprechaun at heart. And
I can see that.
But for me, it's that thing of going, you know what happened to you should never have happened. There's nothing you did that was wrong. There's nothing that you said that was wrong. There is nothing that happened in that situation that is your fault whatsoever, because nothing you could have done could have made that better or worse.
No.
What happened to you should never have happened. So the same as the times when I feel really heavy, I say the same thing to myself. Steve, what happened to you should never have happened. It's not your fault. You made choices, but those choices were the right choices at the time.
That kept you safe. Yeah.
They kept me as safe as possible. And, then as adults, right, we then have that thing of like, this is the way I keep myself safe, physically, mentally, psychologically, spiritually, the different ways that we find ways to keep ourselves safe. And some people that can be going to drugs and, all that sort of stuff. Other people, it's, we close ourselves off. And my team and like my wife, everyone knows when I'm having a bad day, I don't really talk, which is very much the opposite of any other time in my life. But I think that's the way that I have understood it now, and that's from being a social worker and working for Bravehearts for as long as I have, and now venturing into my life coaching. It's that thing of going, understanding that what happened at the time wasn't my fault. I made the choice that I made to keep myself as safe as I possibly could, the safety of my brother and sister, the best that I could, and also with the fear of what would happen to keep my mum safe, because he was a bad man.
Yeah, and I just want to acknowledge that too. I think for so many of us, as we get to adulthood, we look back at those things and there's such a heavy burden on our shoulders because we're so critical of our little self, and we like, well, you should have done this. And I don't know about you, but this is my internal language is like, well, you fucking should have done this, you're a coward. And for as long as because I grew up in the bush, and I'm like fucking throwing rocks and shit and like hurdling fences and cattle tipping or whatever. No, I didn't really do that, but like I'm like this tough big all brawn, no brains kind of butch kind of chick, and I'm like, I can fucking handle myself. And like it's this thing of like like you can't touch this, like can't touch this. But it's like you've got this thing in your head and you're just like nothing can touch you. And then as an adult you look back and you're like, well, you were fucking tough, you were this, you were that, and all the things we tell ourselves growing up. And then as adults we're looking back at that and judging ourselves so harshly for decisions that we made as children. And I look at my nephews and my nieces, and they're so beautiful and they're so innocent and they play, and I know they can't make those big adult decisions. But then I'm like, well, why the fuck should I have ever expected myself to make those big adult decisions? Right. And I think we have to find forgiveness for ourselves. I don't think I have very mixed feelings about forgiving perpetrators. I really do. Oh, yeah. Everyone's like, forgive your perpetrator, like it's so freeing and all those things. I am still deeply angry, I think, in ways I've never even accessed.
Yeah, I think that's a deeply personal choice, right?
100%.
Because for me, no, old mate can go step on broken Lego. No, that cunt's fucked. Like, no.
Yeah, I love it.
I think that's a deeply personal thing. Like, for some people, saying no, fuck you, buddy, is the best way of dealing with it, because that's your strength. So, if for me, it's about going, your healing is where you find your strength. Right. So, your healing journey, my healing journey is about, where do I find the strength in this? Where I find my strength in this is knowing that my kids have a good dad, my wife has a good husband, and I'm a good fucking dude. And
yeah, you are.
But at the end of the day, I know all of my kids love me. All of my kids look up to me. My stepsons are. I'm the first person that they come to with stuff a lot, and so that reflects to me that the one thing that I wanted to be growing up was a good dad. It was also the thing that I was the most frightened of, because I think for me as a boy, going through this space where I was hurt by my biological father, my biggest fear was being a monster. Not that I ever had any of those thoughts or ever acted in that way, but my biggest fear was that was that one day, something might snap and I'll turn out like old mate. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So I spend every day of my life telling my kids I love them. Telling them that they're worthy, that they're wonderful, that I believe in them. Even if they make bonehead decisions, I believe in you. Yeah, I believe that you can make better decisions.
Yeah.
But for me, yeah, that's where I've seen my healing. Because old mate, I don't give a fuck about him and wherever he is or whatever he's doing. I was angry for a very long time, and I wanted to go find him and do some horrible things. Now I don't care. Like, you know, he's missed out on amazing time with my brother, sister, and I. Amazing time with my incredible kids. Like, he's lost so much. That's my healing. He doesn't have that, and he never will.
Yeah. So I know, and thank you for that, Steve. Like, you're just sharing some really powerful stuff with me, and I really appreciate that. I want to dig in a little bit to this weight loss story, and
Yeah.
I know so many survivors. There's we choose to cope. I mean, I fucking eat KFC when I'm stressed. I could choose to eat that every day if I wanted to. It's a crux along with my fruit and nut chocolate when I'm, because obviously eating does something for us, and it's just crazy. So I just want to talk to you about your weight loss journey, or your weight gain journey, I suppose, first, and then like the decision to be able to lose. And how the fuck did you lose that much weight? I'm a heavy bitch, man. Like, that's me. I'm like, well, I'm even less than that. I'm like, look, I've got like a little, I just can't lose this middle bit, all right? Like, I'm trying. But that's a lot of weight, man.
Yeah, well, it doesn't come on quickly either, though, right? Like, it was this space of, like, I found solace in food. Once I stopped doing drugs and drinking all the time, I found solace in food, and I have a ridiculous food addiction, and I know I do. And I got into this stage of just binging and binging and binging, and then I'd feel guilty and I'd throw up. I'd make myself throw up. So that bulimia of that binge and purge. But I was binging so much more than I was purging, and I worked it out with my PT once, that on a good day I was taking in between 20 and 30,000 calories. When if you understand that the general human daily intake for the normal person of average sort of size, they take in about 2,800 calories. So I was more than 10 times that on a good day. On a bad day, I could do 10,000 calories a meal. And so it was that thing of just, I used food to escape, because I would eat until I didn't feel anything. I would eat until this stopped going. And when you've got ADHD, right, your brain just wants to go in all the different directions. And I found a way outside of the medications to make my brain stop. But it was stopping thinking because I was so full I couldn't do anything else. And for me, it was this, the weight was this up and down for years. I was about 24, and I weighed 120 kilos. And that was the first time I decided to go to the gym once. Didn't like it. And went, nah, not doing this. And then eventually got to 180, and then 175, and then I did the Michelle Bridges 12-week body transformation for, like, I don't know, 12 months, and just kept doing it. I lost 80 kilos at one point through that. But I suppose the part of this story that I'm not talking about is part of the stuff that happened is my previous marriages. My first marriage was quite abusive, quite physically and mentally abusive. And my second marriage, we just really weren't happy, and we just weren't really nice to each other. And part of that ended up being a catalyst for me eating more and more and more and more. And just, I didn't value myself. I didn't care about myself. I knew that what I was doing for work was making a difference in people's lives, and that my kids loved me, but everything else was a mess. And eventually, we got to a point where I was so broken that I almost lost my job. Right, like I was in this space where I was able to deal with what I was dealing with work, but it was like I was living life as a tripod. Like it was this, everything was balanced, but if one thing came out of balance, everything would fall off the table.
That makes total sense to me. I feel like that most of the time.
Yeah, and that was, so I ended up. My marriage broke up, and I ended up speaking to a friend who'd had weight loss surgery, and he's like, "Steve, you really need to do something because you're going to die." And I went and spoke with a surgeon who through a place called Weight Loss Solutions on the Gold Coast, and the surgeon basically, I went to him with 3 pages of questions, like ready to hit him with everything and anything, because big decision. I'm looking at a surgery where they're removing 80% of my stomach. And I went in there, and he goes, "Oh, I see you've got a lot of questions. Ask me." And I'm like, "No, you give me a spiel, mate. Like, and if I've got anything left, I'll ask you the questions." And he goes, "Steve, the truth is, you need to have this surgery, or you'll be dead in 2 years. Your heart rate's 220 as a resting heart rate. Your blood pressure's 190 on 122. You'll be dead in 2 years." So that was 5 years ago, and I just decided, you know what? If I'm going to die anyway, I may as well do this. And so I had the surgery, and I started. I was at the gym 6 days a week, and slowly over time, it was about 2 years, and I lost almost all of that weight, and then I had my so I had plastic surgery for my skin removal. So it's called a belt lipectomy. So I had a curtain of skin where they removed nearly 8 kilos of excess skin from around my midsection. The photo was so cool.
Text me that later.
Yeah. But one of the things that I've had to address, and I still address it every single day, is this control of my food. Needing to go, okay, well, because I still don't have that control over like snacking and shit. Like I just don't. I tried really freaking hard, but most of the time I have to try to consciously stop myself, or if I'm sitting there with my wife, she'll go, "Babe, are you really eating now because you're hungry, or is there another choice you can make?" And then she'll pack that away somewhere where that's out of sight, out of mind. Because if it's in my line of vision, mindless eating, and the most dangerous thing for 2 things in regards to weight gain for people who are bariatric patients, especially, is something what's called slider foods. So like your chips and biscuits and stuff that just processes really quickly, and drinking your calories. So I don't drink my calories. That's just it's sugar-free cordials and stuff like that. Like I just don't. But slider foods, Yes, please.
Yeah.
Um,
So I'm just curious, like with the eating for you, what is it about the link, do you think? Because I know there's a lot of victim survivors who do choose to either undereat or overeat, in terms of their coping strategy or, you know, addictive behaviors and things like that. And I know part of it is dopamine seeking and those types of things, but in relation to your own journey, what, like, is there something that you can kind of share? Because I know it's a very difficult maybe thing to, for most people who aren't really aware, they may not know what that link is, but do you know that for yourself?
Yeah, for me it's about one, it's something that I can control, where I didn't have that as a kid, so I found a way to control.
Right.
Two, it's a release. It's this. I don't think it's dopamine or an endorphin thing or anything. It's actually when you're so full that you can't think of anything else. That feeling of like, I've eaten so much, I need to go lay down and have a nap. Your brain kind of just switches off. When I was eating to beyond that point, I couldn't do anything. I would literally just be a bit of a zombie, which was great because at the time it was great because I didn't have to think. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to do the head miles.
What was the intervention? Like, what allows you to stop that? So you know that pattern in yourself now. Mm-hmm. What is it in the way that you do that and the pattern of behavior that helps you to stop that? Like, what's your strategy for kind of breaking the cycle?
For me, it's understanding my why. Right?
And what's your
why do I do this? Why did I initially decide I was going to want to lose weight? Why do I want to make a difference in my own life right now? Why do I do what I do? And just linking that back, for me, that's kind of the thing that kind of circumvents it when I start getting into that space, because I could still binge eat for certain things, but it's very specific things, and even then, it's not at the same level as where I could before. And I don't get that same hit mentally. So for me, it's a very different sort of physiological and psychological response. But the thing that stops me is my why. I got married last year to. Honestly, I tell everyone she's the single most incredible person I've ever met in my life, and I want to be around with her for a long time, and like I'm a shit stirrer, and so I want to be around to annoy my kids for a long time. They haven't heard all my dad jokes yet. I haven't got them all out of my database.
Are you going to give us any Steve? You can't just talk it up like that.
I did just give you one. Men, we've all got a special space in our brain to store dad jokes. It's called a database.
Oh yeah, good job.
Yeah.
Love it. Thanks, man. Thanks. Pay that. That's good.
No worries. But yeah, so I think that for me, that's how I kind of not get around it, but I find a place to stop. It's that, I get those dangerous sorts of thoughts around food or whatever, and I go, no, my why is this, and I've made this decision. I suppose, like anyone who's an addict, it's that thing of going, what is my why? Why am I doing this? And that then makes certain things non-negotiable. And that no matter how I'm feeling, I need to find another way to do it. And if that means that I'm, watching a Yogi Brian reel so he can teach me how to release my fucks with some of his meditation, great. If that's me listening to Wonka or Rocky Horror or Hai Lung or Josh Groban or some random scar from the 90s. Like, find something. Something has to be a non-negotiable. So for me, going to the gym's not negotiable. For me, that is a thing that sets up my day. So it's that thing of going, these are my non-negotiables, and the reason that they're my non-negotiables is this. And the days where I don't want to, it's this. So everything comes back to my why. Everything comes back to that one point, because that's that one focal point of my whys gives me my reasoning for all of my non-negotiables, and that why and all of that reasoning fights all of my but.
Yeah. We don't. We've got so much we can talk about, but I'd really love to get your perspective. You are a really proud Waka Waka man from Cherbourg, and I'd love to get. I really wanted to talk about some First Nations stuff with you, but I'm just so fascinated with your courage and resilience and the choices and insight that you're like putting out tonight in your database and your database.
I'm uploading from my database.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there'll be a few downloads of our amazing conversation tonight. Yeah. See, I got wit, man. I don't know about charm, but I got some wit. I'm just really keen to hear a little bit about your work in community and what you do, and if you can just kind of chat with us a little bit about that, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, 100%. I work primarily in a couple of remote communities, and I absolutely love it. So it was 5 years ago I first went over to Palm Island, and I had, when I was doing my social work degree, I spent a few months in Wujal Wujal, which is far north Queensland, little secret community in the Daintree. And they call Wujal Wujal Australia's New York because it was so nice they named it twice.
Right.
But back then, I had this connection. I'm like, why do I feel so connected to everyone who's here? And it was weird. And one of the aunties there goes, oh, who's your mob? And I was like, all right, no. Back then, I had no idea. And it was I think it was like 7 years ago, could be 6, that I found out about my heritage. And I just decided that I'd dig into it. And everyone's got kind of a bit of a story of anyone who learns about their heritage, everyone's got a bit of a story, right? Like, we just know that. But I decided then that I would face my own internal racism, meaning that what I grew up in at school, we were taught certain things about colonization and the way that kind of worked, and I had to face that and face the fact that it was bullshit, basically. And so I did that, and then in the middle of that, we got invited to go out to Palm, my colleague and I, and I really just. I first went out there knowing that it was a rough community. I already had a couple of fellas out there that I'd been supporting. And I wanted to go out there, and one of the things that we said is that we don't want to be what we call a seagull service. And by seagull service, we mean seagulls fly in, they shit on everything, and they leave. So we weren't going to do that. There was this: if community wants us there, hell or high water, we're coming back. And we said that to our manager, like, if community wants us there, you're going to find the funding. So we did. And we went there, and I met my first client that day when we went in there. And his story is probably one of the only ones that still rocks me to my core, because it was the first one that I ever did that was for someone who lived in the dormitories there. And so for me, as an Aboriginal man working in a community, there's obviously certain protocols, and there's certain things that, with men's business, women's business. and me going onto someone else's land, there's a lot of other things, right? So there's the protocol. I actually have to, more than a random, more than any a white person going in, I have to follow those protocols, or it doesn't bode well. Basically, it's bad. Spirit doesn't look well on that, and our elders, it's disrespecting for my ancestors, my elders, and for the elders who are on the land that I'm going to. So one of the things that we did is, we followed the protocols. We approached the council. We asked what is the correct way for us to do this. And, I've done that now for another community that I'm about to go to, and they were amazed. They said, no other service actually asks.
Yep.
And for me, it was like, that shouldn't be negotiable. We're going onto someone else's land. If they don't want us there, then we shouldn't be going. And so for the men, so on Palm, I work out of like a little, like their little men's thing there, and I've got my own. It's a pseudo office. It's not an office, but you know what? You make do with what you got. All the fellas there, they know me. They know they know that I'm the weirdest looking fella that they'll ever meet. And I have the wildest jokes, and I'm not afraid to have a laugh or be laughed at. It's about that mutual respect and understanding that when you're taking yourself to work in a community, you're ingraining yourself into that community in one way or another, because I know that when you're working in community, and especially a place like Palm, where the 40 tribes, one people are there, so many different people groups have it was a dumping ground, right? Like, we won't get into the history of Palm, but I went there, and so they're all kind of, they'll go and tell their family who lives in Arakoon, and now we're getting phone calls from Arakoon. They got family in Yarrabah, so now we're getting phone calls from Yarrabah. Oh, I've got family who live in Arnhem Land, so now we're getting phone calls from the Northern Territory. I've got family in Mount Isa, so now we've got the Kalkadoon fellows giving us a yell. I've got family on the Sunshine Coast, so now I've actually got clients who live on the Sunshine Coast who will come and see me at Strathpine office. So it's that thing of like, the grapevine is amazing. So you have to be so careful with how you are with people, because you burn one bridge and it can burn many. So I'm completely honest with people. Everyone knows that I call a spade, and I will always respect you. I'll always listen to you. I'll always believe you. And if I can give you some time, I will give you that time. And if I can't right there and then, I will tell you when I can. And that my yes is yes and my no is no.
Yeah. Well, that speaks to integrity. And I think that's really hard when people are working in community. They don't really understand, I think, particularly those cultural protocols. I consider myself pretty well culturally informed.
Yeah.
But even, working in community, I think we sort of just take it for granted. Like, we'll just go out there and help because we want to help. We've got a helping nature, but there's a way to do it right. And I think when we're looking at doing things in a trauma-informed way, particularly, I suppose that's where lived experience is so important, because without that, like I would think for me, I'm like, my heart is in the right place to be like, I want to help and support people, but I just go marching out there because I'm so passionate. I wouldn't even think about potentially some of those things. And that would set everything up in the wrong way and send the completely wrong message, and people wouldn't engage. It's the same with working with the police or any service provider. Like, when you have that understanding, you're approaching it in a way where there's she's all right, like, she's got it, she knows, or he knows, and he's all right, like, he understands, so we can talk to him, he's a good fella.
Yeah, basically. And it's that thing of like with any service that you kind of interact with, or any people that you interact with, you need to have that integrity. You need to be able to, for me anyway, I find the fact that, like, I love a good yarn. I can shoot the shit with anyone better than most, right? Like, but that's one of my gifts, and that's one of the ways that I interact with the people that I support, because if they know we can shoot the shit and talk about pretty much anything, I also give them that space so that when we're going into the heavy stuff and I see that it's starting to unravel a little bit too much, I know that, you know, I've got the skills and the ability to be able to go into that situation and you know, we can flip the situation, we can flip the conversation a little bit, but still come back to it.
Yeah, I think it's about being real as well. Like, you're such a straight up dude, and I don't sugarcoat shit anyway. Like, I just fucking say it how it is. And I think I know probably maybe I get people offside a little bit because I just fucking swear my head off, but like, I'm just me. Like, and I think there's no pretense. I think the biggest thing with any survivors, anyone who's working with anyone who's experienced any trauma, is there's always been gaslighting and manipulation and lies and hiding and, you know, this whole blanket of shit hidden under the carpet. You know, we're not going to acknowledge this truth. We're not going to acknowledge this past, this history. We're not going to be accountable to this. And, you know, it sets it up. And so I think when we're real and honest, and even if we make a mistake, like, you know, you forget some sort of protocol or whatever, and you're like, man, I'm so sorry. But you've got to own it, right? And
but that's it. It's when you don't that that people don't want to interact with you. Yeah, it's when you're not being straight up, and when people think that you think that you're bullshitting them, they don't want to. What you're lying about, right? Yeah. You know, it's like, you know, I'm very honest, probably too honest with the people I support, because at the end of the day, they've trusted me with their innermost hurts, with their story, and some of them for the very first time ever. And so, you know what? They deserve to know everything that I could possibly know. You know, there's very few times over the time that I've been doing this where I've actually gone, no, actually, I can't say all of this. You know, but I think, yeah, for the most part, it's just I give people time, I give people space. I hopefully help people feel as safe as they possibly can, and I suppose I speak to their inner person, not just what's going on here. You know, I want to speak to, you know, to the little version of them. I want to speak to that teenage version of them. I want to speak to them right now. And I want to speak to their future self. And because when you acknowledge that whole part of that whole part of a person, then they know that they're being listened to. They know they're being heard. They know that they're being believed. And that's the thing that's the most important. And it's, you know, yeah, like you said, it's one of those things that I think sometimes, when you have that lived experience, that's when you can do that the best.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I think for so many of us, even if you never report, I know that it's such a mixed bag going forward and reporting to police. And I've always been someone to advocate for that until, you know, like, I realize how difficult it is, and I understand that trauma visits us all in different ways and at different times in our life. And I think there's something to be said about being real and being honest with yourself, but you know, just understanding that we all need to be seen, heard, and feel safe. And sometimes actually you don't need to report, but it might just be enough for you to be able to feel like your story is heard and that it's validated and you're believed. And I think for anyone out there, you really, tribe, and I say this, I never say this lightly, but tribe is so important. And I can't do the work I'm doing without people in my life that structurally support. You know, there's beautiful girls in the background of this helping to run this podcast tonight, and, you know, people that help get things and write newsletters and do stuff, to just volunteer their time to, you know, support this way, because you can't often do this on your own. You can't take a healing journey by yourself. And I mean, you can try, but I feel like it's so important and valuable to have the right people in your life, and sometimes you have to work really hard to find them. But yeah, think what you were saying before, Steve, it's about, being so real and blunt and spade to spade. So important. So look, I just want to really quickly, sorry, I have a little delays in our fucking audio here, but if I can just get you, we're going to run out of time really shortly. If you could just quickly tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. I know you've just started a consulting coaching business. If you'd love to tell us about that and a bit about the Bearded Villains, and we'll pop up some links so people can get hold of you.
Sorry, I've got a big delay.
Yeah, so if you tell us about the Bearded Villains,
100%.
And then
so for me,
about
So two things. So first thing, Bearded Villains is a worldwide beard club that I'm part of, which is, it's basically it's a bunch of dudes who get together. We've got all got lovely beards. You can join. Just I don't know, maybe next time you get a haircut, glue it on. We basically, it's just a bunch of nice dudes who have hairy faces who want to make the world a better place. The main thing for us is brotherhood and family and charity. What I've found with Bearded Villains has been, I've got good men in my life, and some of them are my best friends in the world now, and they're all over the world. And so the other thing is that I'm currently I've started doing some personal life group coaching. So it's about helping people with resilience, but also more than that. Like, it's about understanding where a person's at in life and helping them achieve their goals. And I've been doing that with a dental group here in Brisbane, and a couple of dentists within there. I suppose that's called, my business is called Phoenix Reignited, because I believe, and my wife thoroughly believes, that my story is the story of the Phoenix, because the amount of times that I've rose from the ashes is pretty amazing. And so if anyone wants any help with anything regarding, I suppose, their self-care, or reaching some goals in life, no matter what that is, reach out to me on LinkedIn, or through Bearded Villains Queensland. My website's still being developed, and my social media is just starting out. So, but for me, it's about the same way that I work with the people that I support. With what I do with Bravehearts is pretty much exactly the same way that I will support anyone that I'm helping with life coaching. It's about no bullshit, but what's your goal? Where do you want to be, and how can I help you get there? And being really realistic about it. And that story of my burnout, and showing people my road out of burnout and how they can walk that same path.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome, Steve. Look, we're pretty much out of time, but I know that we're going to talk again, and I know that you'll be back on Off the Cuff with Kel. So I just want to thank you for just sharing so beautifully and so powerfully. I love talking to you. I always find it so inspiring, and then I don't feel so naked by myself out there. So I have bad vision, right? So I just want to say thank you, and you'll be the first to know when I decide to let my chin hairs grow, and I may get a leather jacket. I'm sure that will look so hot and sexy on me, but I would love to join you one time on your motorbike rides. I think that'll be so much fun. But thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of Off the Cuff with Kel. If you don't already have it, please grab a copy of my free book, Reclaim Your Freedom. Guys, we're going to be taking a little break for the next maybe 6 weeks or so. I've got more presentations than I ever have, which is a great testament to this podcast and the work and just being persistent, and you guys and your support. So I just want to reach out and say thank you again for always just standing alongside this journey, being part of, this work. And, we cannot, it doesn't matter if it's me or anyone else who's advocating in this space, and Steve will stand right alongside me in agreement in the fact that we just cannot do this work by ourselves, and it takes all of our voices collectively working together to raise a collective voice, to be able to stand and talk to the voice for victims and survivors in this space. So thank you. I love you guys, and we'll be back in a few weeks with more amazing stuff. Our incredible, lovely Linda, who helps support the work of this podcast and the work for Kel Humphreys stuff, will be joining us on her very first disclosure she'll be sharing when we come back in September. So we'll look forward to that. So guys, thanks again, and we will chat to you soon. Thank you, Steve.